All right, let's get involved. So, this presentation is going to be a little different than most of the other presentations I've done. I actually didn't really intend for this presentation to be included with the AP Human Geo curriculum. I knew it was going to run out of time, but I've got time right now, and might as well teach you guys about the world's biggest supranational organization, the United Nations. And I'm going to sort of have this as two sides. The first half, I'm going to tell you that the United Nations is a good organization. I'm going to tell you what it does. And the second half, I'm going to tell you that the United Nations is trash and we should just get rid of it. So it's sort of two sides of a story, and that's how I'm going to phrase this one today. So here's all the countries in the UN. It's basically all the countries in the world except for Taiwan. Sorry, Taiwan, you're not on the team. And yep, here's the symbol of the United Nations. There's the United Nations building. It's located near New York City. And here's the United Nations General Assembly. And there's Trump telling the UN that he don't like them at all. Okay, so yeah, this Prezi is very limited color formatting. I intended for this Prezi just to sort of be directly related to an essay rather than a traditional note-taking multiple choice test. So the question that I'm just going to propose is the United Nations a worthwhile organization? And I would hold students accountable to hopefully talking a little bit about both sides, saying, yeah, the UN's good, but the UN's also bad. But ultimately making the choice for yourself is this a good organization? Because it's the biggest supranational organization in the world. So let's see what y'all think. Do you think the United Nations is doing a good job or a poor job? So as people have gone around its good job rating, it's gotten as high as 58%, but it's doing a poor job, it's higher than 60. And well, so it's really a split decision. Most people around the world can't really decide of if the UN is good or bad. Maybe a little bit more people might agree it's bad. And then yeah, the good, the bad, the ugly. That's true. All right, so yeah, these are starting questions in class. What should happen when someone breaks the law? Which 5 countries in the world today are the most powerful? Do you think there'll be World War III? Which countries don't matter? It's sad, but it's true. Okay, so let's talk about the history of the UN right now. At the end of World War II, many politicians around the world wanted to create a better version of the League of Nations. The League of Nations was a supranational organization that was made at the end of World War I, but the League of Nations was really bad. Whatever problems I have with the UN, the League of Nations was far worse. So, at the end of World War II, we made this new supranational organization. We invited every single country in the world to join, and for the most part they did. And this idea would be that every single country on planet Earth would send a representative, and we would talk about just global politics and hopefully avoid a World War III. So that's the whole point of the UN. So yeah, World War II was just a terrible war. Hitler, Tojo, Mussolini, killing all kinds of people. It was really bad. A lot of civilians died. So never again, let's have world peace. Okay? And yeah, this new international organization would be based in the United States because, hey, we're the richest, most awesome country in the world, hooray. It originally started in San Francisco, but then later moved to New York City. It was just kind of a larger economic hub, a more sort of global spot on planet Earth. And they called it the United Nations. So there we go. Here's the United Nations, what do I call this? Their chamber, their governmental post. Here's the building of the UN. Here's the original founders of the UN talking it out. And United Nations Day. Basically, everybody's on the team. Okay, so the United Nations is, obviously a supranational organization. Duh. It's made up of 193 members. Notable exceptions, Taiwan, Vatican City, and Palestine. Now let me say why these 3 countries aren't on the team. Vatican City only has 100 citizens. So even if Vatican City wanted to join, I think their excuse was, look, Vatican City, you're basically the Pope and his house. You don't get to have your own seat because you're just too small. And yeah, actually it says right here, Vatican City, not interested in joining. They don't even care. They're like, we're about Christianity, nothing else. Taiwan originally was in the UN, but once the communist Chinese won their civil war, they took over Taiwan's spot, and they said, hey, Taiwan, you belong to us. Taiwan says, no, we're our own thing. And because China still claims Taiwan as their own, they don't want China or Taiwan to even have a seat at the table. So Taiwan has no representation because China says, we represent you, join our country back. Palestine also does not have a seat at the table because Israel says we own you. So it's sort of like the same thing with Taiwan. Taiwan is this, quote, breakaway province from China. Palestine is this occupied zone of Israel. And yeah, the Palestine-Israel conflict causes all kinds of issues in the UN. Palestine would like to join the UN, but Israel won't let them. Israel says, we represent you on your behalf. So, yeah, here's some of the UN representatives. So it's definitely a cool concept with kind of global federalism, because we now have representatives from different countries around the world all coming together to make world laws. And, oh yeah, Kosovo, they're also kind of a breakaway province. They're leftover from the Yugoslavian wars in the 1990s. And then, yeah, Palestine asking to become a member. And the UN is saying no because Israel and the United States won't let them. And, yeah, here's just more representatives in the UN. You see a lot of them have these kind of translator things for their ears so that everybody can communicate with each other. There's a lot of translators in the UN. I think more and more just about every representative knows English because, hey, lingua franca. But for most of history, there were just tons of translators translating stuff between people's languages back and forth. And then, yeah, UN for Taiwan. Taiwan wants to join the team. And Palestinian membership not allowed. Israeli flag. Oh, gosh. All right, so these are the goals of the UN according to their charter. What's the dang purpose of this organization? Their most clear goal is make sure another world war never happens. Because the thought process was, if all the countries in the world could come together and just communicate, we could avoid conflict. And I mean, I think there is some truth to that. Most conflict comes out from miscommunication or from a lack of trying to achieve peace, and that is what the UN wants to do. They want a space for countries to discuss their international grievances. In my last presentation, I talked about all these island disputes around the world and how Pakistan and India hate each other. So this is at least one location in the world where a Pakistani delegation and an Indian delegation can talk to each other. Other countries' representatives can sit in and sort of, try to keep the peace, try to keep a conversation going. It's sort of an open space where people can work out their problems. Yeah, we also want to ensure countries follow their treaties. If two countries sign a treaty with each other and one country breaks that treaty, well, then the United Nations can sort of be the neutral overseer and decide what country's in the wrong. And then also we talked about these in the industrial unit, but promote the 17 goals of sustainable development. And if you recall, quite a few of these are about saving the environment and helping third world countries. The current leader of the UN is this guy, Antonio Gutierrez. The UN leadership changes like every, 6 years, something like that. But he's a cool dude. I think he was the former prime minister of Portugal. And yeah, so his goal is to just keep the UN running and keep the organization good. All right. And yep, here's all the sustainable goals of the United Nations. So the United Nations functionally works. It has a General Assembly. It's sort of like the global Congress, you could say. And the General Assembly, it's this sort of policy-making place. It's got representatives from all over the world. They make laws for the world. And all 193 members are represented equally. And yeah, so decisions are only passed by 2/3 vote. So most of the time, nothing happens. It's really hard to get 2/3 of the world to agree on stuff. But the United States of America has one representative here. China has one representative here. And the island nation of St. Lucia has one representative, and like these tiny, tiny countries have one representative. So there's no factoring for how populated your country is. It's total equality across all countries, big or small. I personally think that's a mistake. We'll get into that later. But just everybody gets one vote for one country in the General Assembly. Okay, and then there's Donald Trump talking to the General Assembly. And here's the General Assembly, and you can see they're calculating all the votes based on the country representatives. So, green probably means yes, and red probably means no. So that's interesting stuff. Every country has a vote, and here's the Sustainable Development Goals right here, and all the countries right here. So the United Nations building is pretty interesting. All right, but so the General Assembly cannot make military decisions. They can only make sort of global policy decisions. Military decisions are only made by the Security Council. The Security Council is sort of this special invite-only club members. That's 15 countries. They ensure the security and international peace of the world. Every single time there's a possible global conflict, the Security Council meets and all the representatives there talk about it. The Security Council determines if a threat exists and encourages the parties involved to settle it peacefully or with combined military means. I know that back in the 1950s, during the Korean War, the Security Council voted that North Korea was in the wrong, and the entirety of the United Nations at that time, which was not the Soviet Union, they all combined their militaries together and helped South Korea and saved them from North Korea. So that was pretty cool. And here's really the thing you should know. The Security Council is the real power players of the UN. The General Assembly, I don't think they've really passed any laws that would affect the international community to any great degree. The Security Council is where the job gets done. So here's the Security Council. It's kind of this horseshoe table. And, oh, what a cool mural. See, I'm going to just zoom in on this mural right here. But, yeah, this mural is sort of like war and peace around the world. So interesting stuff. War and peace. All right, so the Security Council has 15 members. There are some permanent members of the Security Council that will always, always, always have a seat at that table. It's China, France, Russia, UK, United States. Those countries were more or less the winners of World War II, and we said, hey, we were an alliance, we beat the Nazis and the Japanese, so when we make the United Nations, we'll make sure that none of those crazy people start a World War III. How about that? We're like, okay. And the General Assembly, they elect 10 additional members that sort of have these 2-year rotating terms as parts of the Security Council. So even these smaller countries, they can become players in the Security Council as well. I know there's a big push that Brazil, Germany, India, and I think Japan, they want to have permanent spots too. Brazil and India are newly developed countries, and Germany and Japan were the bad guys in World War II, so we don't really want to give them a permanent spot. But I think it's been a long time since, so maybe we could give them a spot now. I don't know. All right, here are the permanent members of the Security Council: France and Russia, China, UK, and USA. And yep, so the non-permanent members, 3 of them got to be from Africa, 2 from Asia, 2 from Latin America, 2 from Western Europe, 1 from Eastern Europe. So that's cool that they're geographically trying to spread out the love of the Security Council. And yeah, who's been serving on the Security Council? So Japan has been on there 22 times, Brazil 20, Argentina 18. Argentina, that's surprising. Colombia 14. Wow, I didn't expect that. But yeah, so all 5 permanent members have served 73 years. So some countries are joining up, which is cool. And then, yeah, I'm told it's unbalanced. So the Security Council makes the real choices. All the other countries, not as serious decision makers. So yeah, the current security general leader is Antonio Gutierrez. I showed you his picture earlier. Before Antonio, there was this guy, Ban Ki-moon from South Korea. Oh, I love Ban Ki-moon. Just the coolest guy. But yeah, he used to be the Prime Minister of Portugal, and he was in the Socialist Party. So that maybe will tell you some of his agenda for the UN to promote socialist, communist policies. That's just the reality of the organization. So yeah, there's Antonio and Trump, and you can see Trump's like, what the hell's up with this guy? Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so here's some interesting things. If you work for the UN, you have a special blue passport, and you can literally go anywhere. And obviously the goal of people who work for the UN is to travel around the world, find some of these shatter belts, these problem spots, and keep the peace. Yeah, so and it's cool because once you sort of work at the UN, you ascend your nationality. You're no longer an American citizen working for the UN. You are a citizen of the world, and you can travel to North Korea or to Iran or to wherever and help the world become a safer, better place. So that's kind of cool. All right, yeah, and here's the UN's main offices. So a lot of them are in the Western world, of course, but then there's also a pretty big office in Nairobi. And my sister has been to this office a couple times, and she says that this is kind of the hub of where things get done in Africa. And as we know, Africa needs a lot of help, so quite a bit of the UN's missions involve that. So here's the UN office in Vienna. I think this is kind of their secondary office, sort of their Europe hub. And then, yeah, laissez-passer, the United Nations passport. And there's Ban Ki-moon hanging out in, oh, what is this? Probably Saudi Arabia? Okay, so the International Court of Justice. This is another thing that's part of the United Nations. It's sort of its own thing as well. But the way you can think about it is the United States, we have a Supreme Court, we have a Congress, we have a president. The United Nations has a Secretary General, it's like the President. They have the General Assembly, it's like the Congress. And they have the International Court of Justice, which is like the Supreme Court. And the International Court of Justice, they call out, the bad people of the world. Joseph Kony, Adolf Hitler, if he was still alive. Osama bin Laden, if he was still alive. And they say, like, you're a terrible person. We don't care where you are in the world. You need to come to justice. And any single member state of the United States, or the United Nations, if you find these bad people, send them to us. We will punish them. We will imprison them. We will do, we will punish the bad people of the world for violating international law. They are headquartered in The Hague. It's the name of a city in the Netherlands. So the International Court of Justice is in the Netherlands, but the General Assembly and the Secretary General hang out in the United States. So it's kind of, this organization is totally international, spread all over the world. So there's the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Here are some of the International Justice Supreme Court members. Okay, and then here's where things are now going to get kind of sticky too. The United Nations sort of has an army, okay? Their army always wear these blue helmets. I think they're just functionally called blue helmets. That's what you just call the soldiers. Okay. They're also called peacekeepers. I guess that's their official name. See, this is why I write this stuff down. So, United Nations peacekeepers are sent on behalf of the Security Council. They go to the shatter belt parts of the world. They go to places that are maybe going to start wars. And, they have weapons, they have guns, and their goal isn't obviously to kill people or hurt people. Their goal is to just sort of make sure no one's fighting. They're supposed to be the referees. But there have been plenty of times in the last 80 years where these peacekeepers have gotten in firefights and have killed people and defended themselves, but that's not their primary goal. So the United Nations obviously doesn't recruit their own militaries. They instead call up a bunch of their member states and say, hey, will you loan the United Nations 10,000 soldiers for the next year? And countries almost always say yes. Interestingly enough, I don't think the United States military has ever committed itself to be peacekeepers, but most other militaries around the world are totally cool with being like, sure, United Nations, take 100 of our soldiers for a year, and for the most part, it works out pretty well. So, yeah, and while they're working as UN peacekeepers, they're given those blue passports, they travel all over the world, and they just keep world peace. So, cool. Here's some of those guys doing their thing. Here's some, I think, what are these, South Korean soldiers, maybe Chinese. But yeah, they're functioning as UN peacekeepers. Women in peacekeeping, it's a growing force. Yeah, they're all about inclusion and diversity. And then top troop contributor countries for peacekeeping. So Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, they're sending all kinds of people. South Africa, yeah, so these are the countries that are really helping out. But yeah, it looks like Bangladesh, Pakistan, India are all about helping out the peacekeeping missions. And where peacekeepers have been deployed, so yeah, a lot of Africa, some Haiti, some Middle East, some South Asia, especially in Kashmir between India and Pakistan. So what do they have? 125,000 personnel. So yeah, it's not a small number of military peacekeepers out there, but mostly stationed in Africa. Okay, so let's talk about some of their successes with the UN. So since its inception, the United Nations has done all kinds of fun stuff around the world. They've provided food to 90 million people. They've assisted 34 million refugees. And actually, that's something I really will give the United Nations a lot of credit for. In the event of some big natural disaster or some war, families get separated apart, they go to refugee camps. The United Nations will really go out of their way to try to reconnect family members that have gotten separated in a natural disaster or in a war. And that's really honorable for them. 71 international peacekeeping missions, working with almost all the countries of the world to stop climate change, assisting countries with their elections, because sometimes they're these really corrupt governments and they, say they're a republic and they say, hey, people vote for me, but your vote doesn't matter because I'll win anyway. Well, the United Nations can come in there and sort of be the referee of the election and make sure it's fair. They also do send vaccinations around the world. Stopping disease is a great idea right now. And yeah, 58% of children on planet Earth get their vaccines through UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund. And yeah, they help a lot of women with maternal health stuff. So all those UN development goals, and it's what the UN's doing. They're trying to make the world a safer, healthier, better place. So here they are giving some people some vaccines, I think. And yep, UNICEF. And here they are delivering food around the world. Peacekeeping operations in Africa, so especially the Congo, North and South Sudan, Mali. So uniformed personnel. So yeah, 20,000 blue helmets in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That country needs some security. So bringing in food to people getting some free food, helping people out, and then the UN doing good stuff. All right, so that was sort of the first half, but now let me tell you why I think the UN is trash. You don't have to believe me, but I want you to just now see sort of the opposite side. I did just say a lot of great things the UN's doing, but now let's see maybe the darker side of the UN. So, what should happen when an employee steals money? For community property, should everyone pay the same or should the rich pay more? Who do you know that wastes your time? How far away do you and your parents live from work? What's the most expensive meal you've ever had? Let's now see the dark side of the UN. So, reasons why the UN is a failure. Well, the United States pays 25% of the US budget, and the USA has never directly benefited from a UN program. In fact, there are times, like I think during Hurricane Katrina, there was some pretty serious problems happening, especially Louisiana. We asked the UN to send in some of their disaster relief stuff to us, and the UN laughed at us and said, no, that disaster relief has to help people in Africa or Asia. America, you can settle your own problems. And it's what the hell? We pay for you. You're based in New York. Your purpose is to help the world, and we need some help right now, and you're not helping, which was just really... Yeah, I thought that was nasty. So, get us out of the UN now, say uncle. And yeah, so the UN's kind of choking us out, saying that they own us. Well, that's rude. Donald Trump hates the UN. Just hates it. And yeah, it's true. When he got elected, he took away $285 million from the United Nations. And yeah, so who pays most of the UN? It's USA, India, UAE, Switzerland, Belgium, Afghanistan. Where's China? Okay, China's the second richest economy in the world. They should pay. Where's Japan? Well, Japan's not a Security Council member, so they don't want to pay. Where's Germany? Oh, they're not a Security Council member. They don't want to pay. Where's Russia? Where's United Kingdom is way the heck down here. So, yeah, there's definitely some countries I'm why aren't you footing more of the bill? You can afford it. #China. Okay, so UN offices are given money, but the vast majority of money at the UN just gets wasted, okay? There's a lot of people, they sit at desks, they answer emails, they answer questions. There's no sense of urgency. There's a massive slow bureaucracy. If I think my sister told me this story that she had a friend in Kenya who wanted to get a loan for a business from the United Nations. She went to the United Nations office in Nairobi. She had to then wait 5 years to get her loan processed. 5 years? Are you insane? Come on, move faster. Make some changes in the world. Yeah, the reform report noted 1/3 of UN operations in 60 countries had a budget of less than $2 million per agency, which meant they could really do very little than run the office. And I think when I read that report, I analyzed it, that the small business loans for Africa, they allocated $2 million in loans. My sister's friend applied for a $5,000 loan, but that office that was supposed to distribute those loans, the office cost the United Nations $3 million a year. So they were supposed to just give out $2 million, but all their workers in that office took a total of $3 million of salaries. So the United Nations, not only did they probably didn't even give out any loans, and they just ate that money to pay for all the people with the blue passports. So it's just some really pathetic stuff, I think. So here they are. Oh, here we're having a meeting. Hey guys, what should we do? Oh, the global trends on opioids. Let's talk about it. Let's allocate some money to stop opioids. Okay, well, let's send 1,000 blue shirts down to Africa to stop opioid abuse. Okay, great. How much are they going to cost? They'll cost about $2 million. Well, how much should we budget for the whole program? Well, about $2 million. Okay, great. High five. Great. Oh my gosh. And yeah, it's this idea too, right? The sloth is there working on people's behalf. They're not getting anything done. And then, yep, once again, all these countries are meeting together. They're talking about how to make the world better, but they're not. It's a lot of talk. It's very little action, and it frustrates me. Right, we need an urgent response to our productivity problems. Why don't I think about getting together with a few people and drawing up some preliminary draft proposals for a possible strategy framework that we could think about sitting down and talking through? And that's so much of the UN. Oh, my Lord. Okay, so some UN agencies are even battling each other for the same funding. It's a bureaucratic mess, okay? Like, so many of these UN agencies are sort of doing the same thing, but they actually waste money, time, and resources battling each other rather than actually battling the problem. Like, for example, the World Wildlife Fund, represented by our beautiful panda picture here, they say that the goal of our organization is to save endangered species. Well, the United Nations Trust Fund for Human Security, they also want to save endangered species. So both of them petition to get more and more money. I mean, the United Nations Environmental Management Group, they also want to save endangered species, so they're fighting the three organizations too. And they spend money to battle each other, which ultimately wastes money. It's so bad. It's a terrible organization in that respect. So, yeah, some sectors, such as water and energy, more than 20 agencies are active. They compete for limited resources. They don't collaborate with each other. And more than 30 UN agencies have a stake in environmental management. And, I mean, if you've noticed, endangered species, they're still endangered, okay? And a lot of these organizations just talk crap about each other. And I think there are even situations where organizations were sabotaging each other. I don't know which organization it was. It might have been the Environmental Management Group, but they were posting pictures of dead pandas saying, like, this is what the World Wildlife Fund isn't stopping. Use us instead. And it's like, solve the problem. Don't make it worse so you benefit. It's so rude. So yeah, the UN budget. So when the United Nations started, its budget was less than $1 million. But as time has gone on, its budget is, this is $1 billion, so less than $1 billion. Now it's over $40 billion. And where's the money going? Like, I don't see the world as being that fantastically of a better place. And what's sad too is their budget was $20 billion back when y'all were born around 2003, but then 2014 their budget's more than doubled. Where's the money going? What are you doing with your money? And then here's the other thing. One vote for country, really. I implied this earlier in the video. But, yeah, like Liechtenstein, Andorra, the Caribbean island countries, you're so small, okay? You hardly have anybody living there. Tuvalu, they have a spot on the UN. Only 11,000 people live there. That's the neighborhood, like, that's half of Summerlin, okay? Why do they get a vote? And then China gets a vote, and India gets a vote. It's not great. And also, many countries around the world don't like the United States. They almost always vote against us. So it's sort of like we invite these countries to come to New York City to vote in the United Nations, and they just treat us like trash. So yeah, it's like what the heck? Why even have this meeting if we're always going to get hated on? So yeah, and here's just the population numbers of the world. So obviously China should have more seats, India should have more seats, and we should have more seats. It should be sort of the what we do in our Congress, where we account for population as a way to determine how many votes people get. And yep, so there's some of these tiny countries too. They have the same votes as the big countries. And yeah, here's some voting about the status of Jerusalem. Most countries voted yes, but where's the United States? We voted no. So the majority of countries in the world hate on Israel. And yeah, of course, Israel votes no. But America and Israel are buddies, and we're trying to help them out. And the United Nations is hating on us. So here's another one. Ensuring respect for international law in East Jerusalem. It was really a law about giving East Jerusalem to Palestine. And the United Nations voted no, but just about everybody else voted yes. Why even try? Yeah, world population cartograms. You've seen these before. So what the heck? Some of these microscopic countries are the same value as America. That's rude. Okay, so even accounting for inflation, the UN expenditure is 40 times higher than it was in the 1950s. So they're just eating up more and more and more and more and more money. So many agencies, so many departments, and these people are also paid big money too. We're talking like almost every person with a blue passport is making at least $100,000 a year. They make way more than the American government pays our government workers. And their cost has definitely more than doubled over the last 2 decades. And my sister has dealt with some of these UN people. For the most part, she's told me they're not the most qualified people. It's sort of they're just politically connected people. They're people that represent various countries around the world, and it's like they're not the most qualified. They're not as capable as other people probably could be. And she's sort of, her opinion too has been like a lot of them are just in it for the money. And it's really sad because the UN's goal was supposed to be about changing the world, not changing your bank accounts. So, yep, against corruption. Stop corruption in the UN. I agree. Here's Ban Ki-moon taking all your money. And then, yeah, here's the costs of the UN over time. It gets more and more and more. Okay, if a country ever disagrees or breaks the UN's rules, usually this is all that ever happens. The UN sends them a letter, okay? They'll say, like, we're really upset with you. Please stop. And then they've got to talk to the Security Council. And, yeah, and the USA, we pretty much have the Security Council on lockdown. So why even have this democracy in the first place if America's the one who's always going to make the big decisions? French peacekeepers in Cote d'Ivoire, they famously raped 41 women. That was super rude of them. So the UN pays these blue helmet guys, gives them permission to go anywhere in the world, and they just rape women. They didn't really get punished for it. I think that's really disgusting. The Atomic Energy Commission is a part of the UN that says, you know, we're going to make sure that all the countries that have nuclear power, they don't repurpose that technology to make nuclear weapons, and we will do random inspections. They've never done a random inspection. We pay them to inspect the nuclear power plants of the world, and they just don't do it because they don't have the dang time, or they're just too busy sitting at their desks in New York eating up their $200,000 salaries. So it just frustrates me. Yeah, and because the UN is this international organization, all these people, all these languages, all these cultures, it's really hard to get a universal act that everyone agrees on. It's really hard to get everybody to work together because there's just so many cultural differences, and it's really frustrating to me. So the UN, take that, strong warning. You know, stop killing your people, North Sudan. Well, North Sudan doesn't care, clearly. And then, we will be very, very angry. We will write you a letter telling you how angry we are. Like, that's, like, what? You have no teeth, United Nations. You'll just send in your blue helmets and give them orders to never even load their rifles. U.S. peacekeepers accused of raping African children will not be charged. What the heck? Ugh, so frustrating. Okay, and this is the part that just beyond blows my mind. Of all the reasons why I hate the UN, this is the one that just tops the charts. So, that fancy building in New York with the UN General Assembly, where representatives come together, make laws, talk about improving the world, they're only in session for 9 days each year. 9 days. It's less than 2 weeks. That's all the time they actually come together and have formal meetings. The whole rest of the year, the ambassadors to the UN, they go to cocktail parties, they hang out at nightclubs, they spend their big fancy salaries, and they just, I work at the UN, I'm going to make the world a better place. It's like, well, what the hell are you doing then? You're just drinking alcohol and eating fancy food. Our U.S. ambassador to the UN has a permanent suite at the New York Waldorf Astoria Hotel. It costs $30,000 each night. So please do the math and tell me how much money we spend housing our ambassador every year. Because it's looking close to $1 million just to put our ambassador in a fancy hotel. It's pretty silly. Okay, so this is most of the year. This is the UN General Assembly. It's just frickin' blank. Okay, no one's there. Only 9 days of the year it actually gets used. It's actually rather sad. Here's where you'll find the ambassadors most of the time. Diplomats do not know how to negotiate. They only know how to keep their job. And I don't disagree with the man on this. There's a whole lot of waste that happens there. And here's the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. It's one of the fanciest hotels in New York. And of course, the U.S. ambassador has to have the fanciest room. That's the room they stay in. Our tax dollars pay for that. Why, I don't know. And this is what a whole lot of it is. Okay, so here's another great question. Why is the UN even based in New York City at all? They've never done any work to help the United States directly. New York City is probably the most expensive city in the United States, possibly one of the most expensive in the world. It just makes sense to move the entirety of the United Nations headquarters and operations to the part of the world that it's needed the most. I mean, they already have that office in Nairobi, so just expand the hell out of it and rebuild the UN building there, and just base everything in Nairobi, because that's where all the services are supposed to come from. So that just would save the UN a lot of money. It's way, way easier for people to live and to stay in Nairobi than in New York. Shouldn't the base of operations be closer geographically to where most services are needed? It just makes sense. So please, UN, get out of our country and go to where you're most useful. Here's the reality of some of these parts of Africa. And here's what UN ambassadors tend to do. They have meetings in their fancy New York apartments, and we love life so much here in New York. We're going to make the world better. Laugh, laugh, laugh. So New York City, how expensive everything is, it's pretty ridiculous. And even if they relocated to like Georgia, okay, that would make me a little more happy, but honestly, get out of our country. So here's just some other terrible things about the UN. Because every single country in the world is represented, they all get different times to share of the different roles of the UN. So there is something called the UN Human Rights Council, and the UN Human Rights Council is supposed to talk about how they can improve human rights around the world, how they can help minorities around the world. Well, Iran is currently head of the Human Rights Council, and Iran has official laws saying that if a woman gets raped, she gets buried in sand up to her neck, and they throw rocks at her face until she dies. Iran also has laws saying if you are openly homosexual, we will throw you off a building and kill you if you are gay. So, what the heck? Why are they the Human Rights Council? They're like the biggest violators of human rights. I'm confused. UN, please stop. Okay? So, Yeah, and then this is the reality too. The UN raises all this money to help people in Africa, but a lot of that money goes straight into the bad governments of Africa. Very little actually gets to the people who need it. What we hereby approve the declaration: Zionism is racist. Also, we say that Israel is a terrorist country and dictatorship is democracy. Wow. Oh my gosh. UN, what the heck? And then, yeah, stop executing in Iran for being gay. I agree. And here's that. And then people getting stoned. And then, yeah, failing to protect the UN and the politicization of human rights. Japan, Brazil, Germany, India demanding to be permanent Security Council members. And I already sort of explained why this is the case. Japan, Brazil, Germany, India pay a lot of money into the UN. They want to have more of a say in it. And Brazil and India, they give a lot of soldiers to peacekeeping missions. And they're even talking about quitting the UN because they feel like they're being disrespected. So let's check it out. One of these countries really do want to join the Security Council. We want to possibly change up the UN, but it's not happening anytime soon. And these are the countries that really want to join. When it comes to blank, do you think Japan is currently playing a very positive, somewhat positive, negative, or negative role in the UN? So I think Japan is feeling better than it used to, but still, like South Korea and China, they're having their island border disputes with Japan, so I think a lot of people are still mad at them. So the following African countries have also shown interest in withdrawing from the UN in recent years. So that big old list of countries, they cited the fact that all 39 people who have ever been indicted by the International Criminal Court were all African. Okay, and it's true. The International Criminal Court, this Supreme Court of the UN, has only ever punished African people. That's racist. Straight up. Because, George Bush invaded Iraq in 2003, killed a whole lot of Iraqi people. That probably violated some international law. Putin invaded Ukraine in 2014. That violated some international law. Members of the IRA terrorist organization, members of the Chechens. There are all kinds of bad people around the world, but the IOC is just targeting Africans. And a lot of African countries are kind of pissed off about that. And I think they're rightfully so. Look, I'm not going to defend some of these dictator bad people in Africa, but I will acknowledge people of all shades of color around the world do bad things. So here's all the people ever indicted by the ICC, or I might have said IOC, but International Criminal Court, ICC, and they're all from Africa. So, hey, there you go. George Bush fabricated evidence to kill people in Iraq, and one of our soldiers, he exposed war crimes in Iraq, and he was put in prison for it. So there's no justice in the world. And the man of the year in organized crime, Vladimir Putin, why isn't he being punished? I don't know. And then in the early 1990s, there was a whole lot of Cold War cleanup events around the world. The Soviet Union collapsed, Yugoslavia collapsed, so peacekeepers increased their budget 10 times over. They did have some good success, okay? They were they helped stop the Rwandan genocide, they helped stop some violence in Botswana, they brought some peace to Sudan, but in 2013, there was a review by the UN on their own people, and they were like, look, there's a lot of corruption. So many of our blue helmet guys, they misuse their passports, they steal money from people, they abuse people. And also, the US, back in 2003, George Bush wanted to invade Iraq. We asked the UN to support our resolution, and the UN actually opposed our resolution. The United Nations said, USA, you cannot invade Iraq. But we invaded Iraq anyway. So why even have this organization? It's supposed to be the supranational organization of international law. They're supposed to be able to tell every country what to do, but we don't even listen to them. So what's the dang point? Okay. What do we got here? Hello, we'd like to express our displeasure. Well, displeasure may be too strong a word. Knock, knock, knock. Syria, stop your civil war. They don't do anything. Have we become unable to broker peace? Yeah, I see the direct impact of these failures every day. Yeah, I agree. And then here's UN peacekeepers eating donuts. Oh joy, really keeping the peace there. And then here's just some more failures of the UN. So in 1994, we tried to stop the Rwandan genocide, and I think the UN did slow it down and ultimately end it, but they didn't act fast enough, and like over 1 million people died. Cholera in Haiti. So after the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, UN led these Nepali aid workers, the Nepali Blue Helmets, but they brought cholera to Haiti, and 10,000 people in Haiti died. Oil for Food program. It was designed to allow Iraq to sell oil in exchange for food and medicine, but accusations surface that Iraq gave this oil. We didn't give them just food and medicine. We also gave them money, and that money Iraq used to buy more weapons and also bribed UN officials. Sexual abuse allegations. The UN also is supposed to bring peacekeeping to South Sudan. It generally failed. And yeah, the UN just, it's not good. I don't even know how else to describe it. It's so much waste. And they're just not really held accountable to anyone or by anyone. There's no government agency that oversees the UN because the UN is supposed to see over all government agencies. They're not the arbiters I wish they would be. So yeah, get the UN out of the US, US out of the UN. A part of me would want to stand with these people and agree with them. So, but let's talk about this though. Okay, let me now counter example my whole second half of my presentation. When considering all of this, has the UN met its goal? The first goal of this organization that I had in bolded letters was prevent another world war. Has that happened? Yes. The World War III has not yet happened. And actually, between 1945 to today, so since the creation of the United Nations, it has been the most peaceful period of all of European history and all of world history. Europe has been the most peaceful it's ever been, ever. Okay? Now, with those statements in mind, I know the UN could do better, and I hope you agree with me. But let's just look at the total amount of dead people from global conflict since the UN has been made. So, in 1945, that was the end of World War II, 70 million plus people were dead. So here's all the major conflicts in all of world history since 1945. Korean War, 1.5 million dead. Vietnam War, 2 million dead. Nigerian Civil War, 1.7 million dead. Bangladesh War of Independence, 3 million dead. Soviet War in Afghanistan, 2 million dead. Congo Civil War, 4 million. Sudanese Civil War, 1.5 dead. 50 other smaller wars, totaling near 10 million. So you could add all the major conflicts on planet Earth, every single conflict together since the creation of the UN to now, and you're probably only going to hit, what, 20 million, maybe 30 million total? So World War II killed 70 million. Maybe the UN did accomplish its mission because global conflicts have not been happening as much as they used to, and the ones that have happened are generally way far smaller in scale. So something is to be said about the UN, I guess. I'll let you decide. Is it a worthwhile organization? You tell me. So yep, still conflicts out there in the world, and hopefully we never have a World War III. Okay, so here it is, the last slide of my presentation. It was Dag Hammarskjöld, the second UN Secretary General, who said it best: the United Nations was not created to lead mankind to heaven, but it was to save humanity from hell. I think that's kind of an interesting way to end it. So, yeah, that's it. All right, kids, peace out. Enjoy yourselves.